Watching this message right now, you need to be extremely careful about what you're putting into your body. There's a danger hiding in plain sight, and it might be closer than you think. That friendly neighbor who keeps bringing you homemade preserves and canned vegetables. Those gifts might not be as innocent as they appear. I'm not saying your neighbor means any harm. In fact, they probably have the best intentions. But what many home canners don't realize is that they could be unknowingly creating the perfect environment for a silent, invisible threat that can cause serious illness or worse. This isn't information you'll hear in casual conversation. Most people don't talk about the hidden dangers of improperly canned foods because they don't understand the science behind it. The risks are real, but they're not obvious until it's too late. Every year, thousands of people suffer from foodborne illnesses that could have been prevented with proper knowledge. Some end up hospitalized. Some face long-term health complications. And yes, in rare but tragic cases, some don't survive. What's most concerning is that the foods that pose the greatest risk often look completely normal. They might smell fine. They might taste delicious. But hidden within could be toxins that your senses simply cannot detect. This information isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to protect you and your family from a preventable danger that's more common than you might think. Type, I need to know this, to protect yourself and your loved ones. The danger I'm talking about is botulism D, one of the most potent and deadly toxins known to science. Just a microscopic amount can cause severe illness, and it's commonly found in improperly home-canned foods, especially those with low acidity like vegetables, meats, and some fruits. What makes botulism particularly dangerous is that it thrives in the oxygen-free environment inside sealed jars and cans. The bacterium called Clostridium botulinum produces this toxin, and it can survive even in foods that appear perfectly preserved. Your neighbor who enjoys canning might be using old family recipes passed down through generations. The problem is, many traditional canning methods don't reach the temperatures needed to kill botulinum spores. Or they might skip the pressure canning process that's absolutely essential for low-acid foods. Even experienced home canners sometimes make crucial mistakes, using the wrong processing time, improper sealing techniques, or inadequate equipment. What's worse, these errors aren't visible to the naked eye. The jars can look perfectly sealed and the food inside can appear completely normal. The Centers for Disease Control reports that home-canned vegetables are the most common cause of foodborne botulism outbreaks in the United States. And unlike many other foodborne illnesses that cause quick, obvious symptoms, botulism can take hours or even days to show effects, making it harder to identify the source. This isn't about rejecting your neighbor's kindness. It's about understanding a genuine risk that many home food preservers themselves don't fully comprehend. Type, I see the danger, to learn more about protecting yourself. If you've consumed improperly canned food, recognizing the early warning signs of botulism could be life-saving. The symptoms typically begin 18 to 36 hours after eating contaminated food, but can start as soon as 6 hours or as late as 10 days afterward. The earliest signs often appear in the head and face. You might notice blurred or double vision, drooping eyelids, or slurred speech. These symptoms occur because botulinum toxin attacks the nervous system, blocking signals to your muscles. As it progresses, the weakness moves downward through your body. You may experience difficulty swallowing, a dry mouth, and a feeling of thickness in your tongue. Your voice might become faint or hoarse. These symptoms can be easily confused with other conditions like stroke or neurological disorders. The weakness continues spreading to the neck, arms, torso, and eventually the legs. In severe cases, the muscles that control breathing become paralyzed, which can be fatal without medical intervention. What makes these symptoms particularly troubling is their gradual onset. You might dismiss early vision problems as tiredness or attribute muscle weakness to overexertion. This delay in seeking treatment can be dangerous, as antitoxin is most effective when administered early. If you experience any of these symptoms after consuming home-canned foods, seek medical attention immediately and be sure to mention your recent consumption of home-preserved food. This crucial information can help doctors diagnose and treat you correctly. Type I recognize these symptoms to learn what to do next. Botulism risk isn't limited to obvious home-canned vegetables. There are surprising sources you might not suspect that come from your well-meaning neighbor's kitchen. Those beautiful flavored oils with herbs and garlic floating inside. They create an oxygen-free environment perfect for botulinum growth, especially if made without proper acidification and refrigeration. The same goes for that homemade garlic butter or infused honey. Home-fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, or pickles can be risky when fermentation is cut short or proper acidity isn't achieved. Your neighbor might not realize that these traditional preservation methods rely on specific pH levels for safety. Even baked goods can pose unexpected dangers. That delicious pumpkin bread with homemade pumpkin puree. If the puree was improperly canned, the botulinum toxin isn't destroyed by baking temperatures. Homemade condiments like ketchup, salsa, or chutney are particularly concerning. Many home recipes don't include enough acid to prevent botulinum growth during storage, unlike commercial versions that are carefully formulated for safety. Smoked or cured meats prepared in backyard smokers might not reach temperatures necessary to kill spores or contain enough salt and preservatives to prevent growth. The most insidious aspect. These foods often come with stories about family traditions or special recipes, making it socially awkward to question their safety. And products that have been sitting in your neighbor's pantry for months give botulinum toxin ample time to develop to dangerous levels. Type I will check my food to learn how to avoid these dangers. The fundamental issue behind home canning dangers isn't your neighbor's cooking skills, it's the gap between modern scientific understanding and traditional preservation practices. Home food preservation methods developed before we fully understood microbiology, and many techniques were passed down based on what seemed to work rather than scientific principles. Many beloved family recipes were created before pressure canners were widely available. Water bath canning was once used for everything, but we now know it doesn't reach high enough temperatures to kill botulinum spores in low-acid foods. Your neighbor may be faithfully following grandmother's methods without realizing science has disproven their safety. The problem is compounded by the resurgence of home canning as part of the DIY and homesteading movements. Social media and blogs often share canning recipes without proper safety warnings. Beautiful images of pantry shelves lined with home-preserved foods rarely mention the critical safety steps required. Even more concerning, some rebel canners actively promote outdated methods, claiming that current safety guidelines are overly cautious. They point to generations of family members who survived on home-canned foods as evidence, ignoring the fact that foodborne illness was often misattributed to other causes throughout history. Food preservation is fundamentally about controlling microscopic organisms, something we can't see or detect without laboratory equipment. No amount of experience or intuition can tell you if botulinum spores are present or if the acidification is sufficient to prevent their growth. Understanding this root problem helps explain why even the most caring and competent neighbor might unknowingly present you with dangerous food. Type, I understand the real problem, to discover solutions. You can protect yourself from botulism while still maintaining good relationships with your generous neighbors. Here are immediate steps to take when you're offered home canned goods. First, learn to recognize high-risk foods. Low-acid vegetables, like green beans, corn, beets, meats, fish, and mixtures like soups and stews are the most dangerous when pressure canning is skipped. Fruit preserves and pickles are generally safer due to their high acid content, though not risk-free. Always examine jars carefully before accepting. Look for signs of spoilage, bubbling liquid, mold, cloudiness, bulging lids, or unusual odors. If the metal lid flexes when pressed in the center, the seal has failed. Decline politely. Ask casual questions about the canning process. Did you use a pressure canner for these green beans? Or, I've been thinking about canning. What method do you use? Their answers will reveal a lot about their knowledge of safe practices. If you accept high-risk foods, don't feel obligated to consume them. You can appreciate the gesture while discreetly disposing of the contents. Clean any surfaces the food touches thoroughly. For lower-risk items like jams or thoroughly fermented foods, you can boil many canned foods for 10 minutes at sea level, adding 1 minute for every 1,000 feet above sea level, to destroy the botulinum toxin if present. Though this won't kill the spores. The safest approach is to steer conversations toward neighbors sharing fresh produce rather than preserved versions. Type, I'm taking action, to learn advanced protection strategies. Building a long-term strategy to protect yourself from unsafe home canned foods requires tact, knowledge, and planning. Here's how to create a sustainable approach. Educate yourself about safe canning standards. The USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning and resources from the National Center for Home Food Preservation are gold standards. When you understand proper methods, you can better evaluate what you're being offered. Develop diplomatic responses for declining risky foods. Practice phrases like, I'm so touched by your generosity, but I'm on a special eating plan right now, or, my doctor has me avoiding certain preserved foods, but I'd love the recipe to try later. Create a deflection strategy by expressing interest in other forms of sharing. Say something like, your garden produce looks amazing. I'd love to learn more about growing vegetables instead of preserving them. If you're regularly offered home canned goods, consider hosting a canning workshop with a certified food preservation expert. This provides a non-confrontational way to introduce current safety standards to your community. For neighbors who regularly share food, consider gifting them a modern canning guide or offering to split the cost of a pressure canner as a joint investment in food preservation. Keep a supply of commercial alternatives to quickly replace disposed gifts in your own cooking. If you accept green beans but plan to discard them, have store-bought versions ready so you can still tell your neighbor how much you enjoyed them in your casserole. Type, I'm building my defense, to discover recovery methods. If you suspect you've consumed contaminated home canned food or are experiencing symptoms of botulism, immediate medical attention is crucial. Explain to healthcare providers that you've eaten home-preserved foods recently. This vital information can speed diagnosis. Botulism treatment typically involves hospitalization and administration of antitoxin. The earlier treatment begins, the better the outcome, which is why recognizing symptoms quickly matters. Recovery from botulism can take weeks or months as your body heals from the neurological damage. During this time, you might need respiratory support, physical therapy, and nutritional assistance depending on severity. For milder cases of foodborne illness from home-preserved foods, focus on hydration. Clear fluids, electrolyte solutions, and broths help replace lost fluids. Avoid antidiarrheal medications unless prescribed, as they can prevent your body from eliminating toxins. Probiotics may help restore gut health after recovery begins. Natural options include yogurt with live cultures, kefir, or fermented foods. Ironically, when properly prepared, fermented foods are beneficial. Your digestive system might be sensitive for some time after exposure to contaminated food. Introduce foods gradually, starting with simple, easily digestible items like rice, bananas, and toast before returning to your normal diet. Remember that full recovery is possible. The human body has remarkable healing capabilities, especially when supported with proper medical care and good nutrition. While severe botulism can have lasting effects, many people recover completely with prompt treatment. Type I choose healing to learn about expert resources. Reliable information about home food preservation safety is essential, whether you're checking the safety of gifts or interested in canning yourself. Here are trustworthy expert resources to consult. Contact your county's Cooperative Extension Service office. These offices offer food safety information, testing services for pressure canners, and sometimes workshops on safe preservation. Their agents can answer specific questions about evaluating home-canned gifts. The National Center for Home Food Preservation, nchfp.uga.edu, provides science-based guidelines for all preservation methods. Their site offers free publications, tutorials, and the most current safety recommendations. For medical concerns, the CDC's botulism page provides authoritative information about symptoms and when to seek help. In a suspected botulism emergency, doctors can contact the CDC 24/7 for consultation and antitoxin release. If you're interested in learning proper canning, seek certified master food preservers in your community. These trained volunteers can provide hands-on guidance following tested safety protocols. Be cautious of information sources. Many popular food blogs, social media accounts, and even some cookbooks share unsafe preservation methods. Even a site or video with millions of followers may promote dangerous practices if not backed by scientific testing. When consulting healthcare providers about possible food poisoning from home-canned foods, see specialists familiar with foodborne illnesses if symptoms persist. General practitioners might not immediately recognize botulism's neurological symptoms, so being your own advocate is important. These expert resources can help you navigate both the scientific and social aspects of home food preservation safety. Type I'll seek experts to discover hidden solutions. Beyond the standard safety advice, there are lesser-known strategies for handling the home-canned food dilemma. These creative approaches can help protect you while preserving relationships. First, consider using pH test strips, available inexpensively online, to discreetly check the acidity of questionable foods. For safety from botulism, foods should generally measure below 4.6 on the pH scale. While not foolproof, this provides an additional data point when evaluating gifts. An innovative approach is repurposing gifts. That questionable tomato sauce might be unsafe to eat but could become a seed-starting medium for your garden. Those pickles might work better as a cleaning solution. Vinegar is a natural cleaner. This allows you to genuinely thank your neighbor for a useful item. Consider the display technique for particularly beautiful canned goods. Some home-preserved foods, especially fruits in clear liquids, can be displayed as decorative items rather than consumed. Your neighbor sees their gift honored in your home without you risking consumption. For frequent gifters, Try the exchange strategy, offer to trade their canned goods for something you make that doesn't carry preservation risks, like fresh baked goods or crafts. This maintains the social exchange while steering away from risky foods. Learn about resharing networks, community groups where you can anonymously donate unwanted food items. This allows someone with proper knowledge to evaluate the safety of the food while preventing waste. These creative solutions address both the safety concerns and the social dynamics surrounding food gifts. Type I've found new solutions to learn prevention strategies. Protecting your family from unsafe home canned foods requires a thoughtful approach, especially when children or elderly relatives might accept neighbors' gifts without your knowledge. Start by having a family meeting about food safety without focusing exclusively on your neighbor's gifts. Frame it positively, we're learning more about food safety this month. Teach children to always check with an adult before eating foods given by others. For elderly parents or relatives who might receive food gifts directly, approach the topic by sharing an article about recent botulism cases. Say something like, I read this concerning article and wanted to make sure you know the latest safety recommendations. Create a family protocol for food gifts. Perhaps all home-preserved foods come to you first for evaluation, or you establish a rule about only accepting certain categories of gifts like jams or jellies while avoiding low-acid vegetables. When hosting gatherings, plan your menu in advance and be specific when people offer to bring dishes. This prevents well-meaning neighbors from bringing potentially unsafe home-canned foods to share with your entire family or friend group. For children, practice polite refusal phrases appropriate for their age. Even young children can learn to say, "No thank you, I need to check with my parents first," when offered food. Remember that education works better than fear. Teaching family members the why behind food safety creates lasting awareness rather than just rules to follow when you're watching. Type, I will protect my loved ones, to learn about long-term health. The issue of home-canned food safety connects to broader principles of food sovereignty and health awareness that can transform your overall well-being. Learning to evaluate food gifts develops a crucial skill, conscious consumption. This mindfulness naturally extends to questioning commercial food sources, reading labels, and making informed choices about everything you eat. The botulism risk from improperly canned foods highlights a fundamental truth: invisible threats can have profound health impacts. This same principle applies to chemical preservatives, pesticide residues, and artificial ingredients in commercial products that might contribute to long-term health issues. Taking control of what enters your body, whether by politely declining a neighbor's questionable canned beans or choosing organic produce, represents a powerful form of self-care. Both actions stem from the same core value: your health deserves protection. This awareness can inspire a journey toward greater food independence. Many people who begin by questioning the safety of others' preserved foods eventually learn proper canning techniques themselves, gaining skills that enhance food security and quality. The social navigation skills you develop when handling food gifts apply to many health boundaries. Whether declining drinks and you're not drinking alcohol, avoiding allergens at a dinner party, or protecting your sleep by turning down late-night invitations, all require the same tactful but firm self-advocacy. By addressing this specific food safety issue, you're developing a template for honoring your body's needs across all areas of health. Type, I see the bigger picture, to discover food industry secrets. The risks of home-canned foods highlight fascinating contrasts with commercial canning practices and regulatory standards that few consumers understand. Commercial canners operate under strict FDA regulations requiring validated scientific processes. They use specialized equipment that reaches precise temperatures and pressures. Automated timing systems, and laboratory testing for pH and microbial content. Every batch is traceable in case of contamination. Home canners, meanwhile, often rely on subjective measures like visual cues or timing methods passed down through families. The margin for error is substantially higher without industrial controls and testing capabilities. Interestingly, while the U.S. has strict regulations for commercial canners, it has no oversight for home preservation. Other countries like France and Italy offer certification programs and community canning facilities with proper equipment and supervision, resources largely unavailable in America. The botulism risk in home canning reveals a significant regulatory gap. While the FDA can recall commercial products for minor labeling issues, your neighbor can distribute potentially lethal home canned vegetables without any oversight whatsoever. Food industry insiders understand this discrepancy, which is why many professional food scientists and chefs are extremely cautious about home-preserved gifts. They recognize that even the most loving home cook can't replicate the safety systems of commercial operations. This knowledge isn't meant to glorify industrial food or diminish traditional practices. Rather, it highlights how modern food safety science has evolved to protect public health. Knowledge that hasn't fully penetrated home kitchens despite its life-saving potential. Type I demand better standards to learn about safe alternatives. You can enjoy the benefits of preserved foods without the risks by exploring these safer alternatives to questionable home canned products. For vegetable preserves, freezing is significantly safer than canning. Encourage neighbors with abundant gardens to share fresh produce that you can freeze yourself, or accept frozen vegetables instead of canned ones. Freezing prevents botulinum toxin production completely. If you enjoy the flavors of pickled foods, refrigerator pickles are an excellent alternative. These are preserved through refrigeration rather than canning and remain safe because they don't create the oxygen-free environment botulinum needs. Quick pickles using vinegar, salt, and refrigeration offer similar flavors with virtually no botulism risk. For fruit preserves, look for high-acid recipes with added lemon juice or commercial pectin. These typically have pH levels well below the botulinum danger zone. Small batch refrigerator jams that skip the canning process entirely are even safer. When it comes to sauces and salsas, freezer storage versions eliminate the botulism risk while preserving fresh flavors. Portion these into freezer containers rather than canning jars for long-term safety. If you appreciate the convenience of ready-to-eat preserved foods, consider water bath canning only high-acid foods like properly tested fruit preserves, which can be safely processed without a pressure canner. For those who enjoy giving and receiving food gifts, commercially canned specialty products offer the same convenience with validated safety processes. Many small-batch artisanal companies now create preserved foods with both safety and flavor in mind. Type I choose safe alternatives to discover community support. Creating safer food preservation practices extends beyond individual choices to community-level action and education that benefits everyone. Consider organizing a community canning workshop with certified experts. Your local cooperative extension office can often provide master food preservers to teach current safety standards. Frame this as a fun skill-sharing event rather than a critique of current practices. Start a community lending library for proper canning equipment. Pressure canners can be expensive, but when shared among neighbors, everyone gains access to safer preservation methods without the full investment. This cooperative approach builds community while improving safety. Engage local schools in food safety education. Many science or home economics teachers welcome guest experts to discuss the microbiology of food preservation. This educates not just students but entire families when children bring information home. Community gardens can incorporate preservation workshops at harvest time, teaching participants to safely preserve their bounty. This connects growing and preserving knowledge in a natural learning progression. Senior centers present important outreach opportunities, as older adults may be using outdated canning methods learned decades ago. Offering updated information in a respectful way that honors their experience can save lives. Local food pantries and community kitchens can establish policies about accepting home-preserved donations, creating awareness about safety concerns while still encouraging food sharing. By shifting the conversation from individual gifts to community food systems, you remove the awkwardness of personal rejection and create a supportive environment for learning modern preservation safety together. Type I will spread awareness to prepare for challenges. Implementing safer food practices around home canned goods presents real challenges that require practical solutions. The biggest obstacle is often the emotional connection people have to family preservation recipes. Acknowledge this attachment when discussing safer alternatives. I know your grandmother's pickle recipe means a lot to you. Could you tell me more about her while we adapt it for refrigerator storage? Financial constraints can make proper equipment seem out of reach. Research community resources like extension offices that offer pressure canner testing services, library loan programs for equipment, or community kitchens with proper facilities that can be used for a small fee. Social pressure to accept and consume gifted food is particularly strong in certain cultures and communities. Develop culture-specific approaches that honor the gift-giving tradition while protecting health. This might include accepting gifts with genuine gratitude but repurposing them non-consumptively. Food waste concerns can create guilt about discarding potentially unsafe items. Reframe this thinking: using questionable food isn't sustainable if it results in illness. The truly sustainable choice prioritizes health. Limited storage for safer alternatives, like freezer space for foods that would otherwise be canned, requires creative solutions. Consider community freezer shares, batch cooking events where multiple households share preservation duties, or rotating preservation schedules with trusted friends who use safe methods. Maintaining relationships with enthusiastic home canners takes finesse. Redirect their generosity: your tomatoes are always amazing. Could I get some fresh ones for sauce instead of your canned version this year? Type I will overcome challenges to claim your power. Making conscious choices about home-preserved foods represents more than just avoiding foodborne illness. It's an act of personal sovereignty that ripples through every aspect of your life. When you politely but firmly establish boundaries around food safety, you practice the essential skill of honoring your well-being even when it creates momentary social discomfort. This same strength serves you in countless other situations, from workplace boundaries to personal relationships. The confidence you develop by making informed food choices instead of defaulting to social politeness becomes a template for other decisions. You learn to trust your knowledge and instincts rather than deferring to tradition or avoiding conflict. This food safety journey transforms your relationship with consumption. You shift from passive recipient to active evaluator, applying critical thinking to what enters your body. This mindful approach naturally extends to other consumer choices, from household products to media consumption. The research skills you develop while learning about home canning safety transfer to other health decisions. You become better at distinguishing between evidence-based information and anecdotal claims or marketing hype. Most importantly, you reclaim authority over your physical health. Rather than risking illness to avoid awkwardness, you recognize that your body deserves protection. This self-respect forms the foundation for comprehensive wellness. By addressing this specific food safety issue thoughtfully, you're actually practicing a profound form of self-care that affirms your right to make choices aligned with your well-being. Type I am empowered to hear final crucial information. The most important takeaway about home canned foods is this: botulism toxin cannot be detected by appearance, smell, or taste. A jar can look perfectly normal while containing a lethal dose of toxin. This invisible nature makes it uniquely dangerous among foodborne threats. What makes this warning increasingly urgent is the recent surge in home canning without corresponding safety education. As more people preserve foods at home, often learning through informal channels like social media rather than science-based resources, the risk grows daily. The simplest protection strategy remains the most effective: approach low-acid home-canned foods with extreme caution, especially those processed without pressure canning. No matter how experienced the canner or how beloved the recipe, the microbiology of botulism doesn't make exceptions. Remember that this caution doesn't require rejecting the generosity or traditions behind food gifts. You can appreciate the sentiment while making separate decisions about consumption based on safety knowledge. Your awareness of this issue isn't just self-protection, it positions you to potentially save lives by sharing science-based preservation information within your community. The most caring response to unsafe canning practices isn't silent acceptance but thoughtful education. You now have the knowledge to protect yourself and others from this preventable danger. Trust your understanding, honor your health, and approach home-preserved foods with informed caution. Type I am protected to confirm you've received this life-saving information.